Hey, Nassau Street Church, how are you guys doing? You know, in Psalm 122, we have the psalmist giving us this wonderful declaration of how sweet it is when they said to me, "Let us go up to the house of the Lord," gathering together at the temple to worship God with his people. I understand we need to look at this in the Old Testament context, and the temple being the place where God's presence dwelt. And of course, we live today in 2022. But the reality is the psalmist knows the richness of gathering together as God's people. Years later, the writer of the Hebrews would encourage us in chapter 10 to not neglect meeting with each other as is the habit of some, gathering together to encourage each other in the faith. And then I think of Psalm 133, where David tells us how good it is and how pleasant it is when brothers and sisters dwell together in unity. God's people gathered through the gospel, made one through the gospel, dwelling in unity as they seek to live together as God's people. I mention those verses because this Sunday, for the first time since March of 2020, we are gathering as a church without mandates or restrictions. As I look back at the last 2 years, I am incredibly thankful and grateful to God for the unity that has existed both in the body of NSC and in the leadership. When I hear of some of the realities of what's taken place in churches and other areas during these past 2 years, I do well up with gratitude to our God. I'm thankful for the unity that's been displayed as we've enjoyed the freedoms and the liberties that our government has given us, while following the restrictions and the mandates during these past 2 years. And in saying that, I know there's a lot of different views that continue to be out there in our society on a whole. Those who joyfully put their masks away this past week, and those who have concerns and are wondering if things have maybe lifted a little bit too quickly. So I thought it would be beneficial to make this short video to remind each other of the grace that God has extended to each one of us, to reflect on that grace and the grace that God calls us to continue to display to each other in the body of Christ. Particularly in light of the fact, as we looked at a few months ago, that this is not a Tier 1 or a Tier 2 issue, but rather a Tier 3 issue. So as we gather this Sunday, with the mandates lifted, we will continue to take the same posture that we've taken the past 2 years. The posture that the government and the health officials have encouraged us to take. We'll enjoy the freedoms that they are once again giving to us as of this week. That means there are no more restrictions in place. I know this will come with varying views and concerns. So I'm calling on us to display grace and kindness towards each other yet again. As masks are no longer mandated, we will not be requiring them to be worn in church or for church ministries. And I also know for some of us, we may be more comfortable being in public with a mask on. What we want is for you to be comfortable and at ease as you return to church. If you are able to do that while not wearing a mask, you are free to follow the government orders and the lifting of these orders. And if you're not, you are free to attend while wearing a mask. And may we all have grace with each other as we continue to come back, gathering together as God's people. And then in the next number of weeks, we'll continue to roll out what it means for us to gather together again in new times, in terms of how we serve communion, potluck possibilities again, etc. Thanks, church. Looking forward to worshiping together this coming Sunday.